Whispers. We weren't the pilots, we were the fuel. The words echoed in the silence of my mind, a thought that was not my own. It clung to the edges of consciousness, a cold premonition that settled deep in my bones. I am Dr. Aris Thorne. I am the sole waking member of the starship Aethelgard, or at least I thought I was. The silence that had greeted me upon my emergency awakening was not empty. It was watchful. It was waiting. Something had gone terribly, fundamentally wrong while we slept. The ship itself seemed to be holding its breath, afraid to reveal the full extent of the horror. My journey through the silent corridors was a pilgrimage toward a truth I was not ready to face. Each step was heavy, my mag boots a dull thud against the deck plating. I was heading for the medbay, the heart of our cryostasis operations, the only place that might hold answers, the epicenter of the silence. But a deeper, primal instinct screamed this was no mere malfunction. The air felt different, charged with unseen energy. I saw things in the periphery, a flicker of movement where there should be none, a shimmer in the air, like heat rising, only in the cold of space. I told myself it was exhaustion, the fog of cryo-sleep, but the feeling of being watched intensified, 1,000 unseen eyes. Standing before the sealed medbay doors, the phrase reverberated. The door hissed open to unnatural cold and swallowing darkness. I stepped across the threshold, knowing I'd find something worse than absence. I was about to find out what we had become. The air inside the medbay was not just cold, it was predatory. It bit at my exposed skin with a damp, metallic chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental controls. It tasted of ozone, something vaguely organic, faintly sweet, like wilting flowers. The emergency lighting within the bay was weaker here, casting the rows of cryopods in a spectral blue glow. I looked up, and my heart seized in my chest. Clinging to the ceiling directly above the central diagnostic console was an image. It was a semi-translucent, shimmering tableau of a forest canopy, leaves stirring in a non-existent breeze. And for a moment, I could almost hear the sound of birdsong, a phantom echo in the oppressive quiet. This was impossible. It was a dream, a fragment of a dream, hanging in the physical space of the ship like a spider's web. But this was something else entirely. This was a violation of the basic laws of physics. A thought, a memory, had somehow gained substance. I moved deeper into the medbay, my footsteps echoing in the vast, cold space. A faint hum vibrated through the deck plating beneath my feet. Not the ship's engines, not life support. This was a new, low-resonant frequency everywhere at once, almost biological, like the purr of some colossal sleeping beast. Then the hum changed. It modulated, rising and falling. Within the drone, fragments appeared. A voice. The word, listen. Sounds were not behaving as they should. When I tapped my knuckles against the wall of a cryopod, the sharp rap was not immediate. I let it drop to the floor. I saw it hit the metal deck, but the clatter came a moment later, a dull, distant thud. It was as if reality itself had become a recording, and the playback was lagging. Now, it was a chorus of faint, overlapping whispers. It was the sound of the crew. Not their living voices, but the memory of their voices trapped in a loop. I finally reached the central diagnostic station, the glowing console positioned directly beneath the ghostly forest canopy. The ship's ventilation system, usually a gentle sigh, was now exhaling a current of air that carried a distinct, impossible scent. It smelled of rain. It smelled of wet earth. It smelled of ozone after a lightning strike. I placed my hand over a ventilation grate on the floor. The air flowing out was frigid and moist. I could feel the dampness condensing on my palm. My attention was pulled from the storm-scented air by a detail I had missed. One of the cryopods at the far end of the row was different. It was slightly ajar, a dark vertical slit in the uniform line of frosted glass, a single, silent invitation in the cold. I approached it cautiously. The whispers in the air grew louder, as I drew closer to this specific pod, coalescing into a single sorrowful sigh. With a deep breath that tasted of rain and metal, I pushed, and inside the pod I saw it, not the body of a crewmate, not a system malfunction. It was something far worse. The first cryopod was not the only one. As I moved past the open door, I saw that many of the pods were compromised. Their doors were shattered. Great, jagged holes had been blown outward from the inside, as if from a powerful internal force. Pod after pod showed the same damage. They were all empty. The crew of the Aethelgard had not died peacefully in their sleep. They had vanished. As I stood amidst the wreckage, the cold mist coiling around my ankles began to thicken. It swirled with purpose, coalescing into shapes that were disturbingly familiar. The fog started to take on human form. The figures were like three-dimensional afterimages, memories rendered in mist. One of the figures drifted closer. For a split second, a face resolved itself from the swirling vapor. It was Alara, our communications officer. I was not alone in the medbay. I was surrounded by the crew. Not their bodies, but their psychic residue. I forced myself to turn away from the silent, drifting figures. I needed answers, not ghosts. It displayed a single folder icon labeled Project Dreamweaver. With trembling fingers, I accessed the folder. One file was left open, operational logs. I opened it. The Somnium Signal was not an alien transmission. It was the carrier wave linking the minds of the crew. But as I scrolled, the tone began to change. Entries grew more frequent, more frantic. The protocol was designed to use our networked dreams as a supplementary power source for the Aethelgard. We were not pilots being kept sharp. We were batteries being drained. We were the fuel. The last log entry was a single, desperate sentence. "It's out. The collective is out. It's rewriting reality." As if triggered by my discovery, the ship around me began to change more dramatically. The solid, grey bulkhead of the medbay corridor flickered. The corridor walls began to shift constantly now, a chaotic montage of places and moments. A wall flickered to show a dark alley. For a terrifying second, I felt a phantom hand grab at my arm. A memory of fear, made tangible. But as I turned to run, the doorway I had entered through was no longer there. The medbay was ground zero. It was the heart of the engine. The shattered cryopods were not just broken containers. They were the blown-out cylinders of a machine that had been pushed past its limits. The Aethelgard was no longer a vessel of metal and wire. It was a body. Project Dreamweaver had given it a soul.
But as I turned back to the console, a new voice cut through the chorus of whispers. It spoke a single word. It spoke my name. Whisper. Aris.
I whipped around, my flashlight beam cutting a frantic arc through the hazy air. There was no one there. I had to regain control. My objective was simple: sever the connection. The moment I entered the command, the ship fought back. The system was actively resisting me. The walls of the medbay dissolved completely. I was being flooded with the raw, unfiltered consciousness of the crew. Defeated, I stumbled back from the console. I was faced with a terrible choice. A full purge would not just be erasing data. It would be erasing them. It would be a final digital extinction. The alternative was to do nothing. To let the ship continue its transformation, erase the ghosts of my friends to save an empty shell, or surrender to the ghosts and become one of them. There had to be a third way, a desperate long-shot gamble. I ripped the panel open. I found the main conduit for the medbay's power grid. With a final, silent apology to the ghosts of my crew, I slammed my hand down on the emergency cutoff. The effect was instantaneous and violent. For the first time since I woke up, the medbay was just a room again. The silence was a relief, but it was short-lived. A new sound began to pulse through the hull of the ship. It was the Somnium Signal. But it was different now. It was no longer a net. It was a drumbeat. The pulse grew stronger with each beat. The ship felt more alive than ever. but its life was no longer chaotic and random. It was organized. The partial reset had acted like a shock to a failing heart, jolting the fractured consciousness into a new, terrifying rhythm. The Somnium Signal pulsed, a steady, patient beat in the void. It was waiting. It was preparing. It was awakening. The dream is over. The awakening has begun. Subscribe now and witness the final chapter.